This video is sponsored by Arena Breakout Infinite. Many of us have a common conception of what a business is. They provide a service, they provide a product, or, that some intangible thing. Whatever concept you have of a business, there typically is like one unifying thing. The point is to try and make money. Or is it? Evil Geniuses is one of esports' most reputed brands, having competed in various different esports titles since the early 2000s. For this channel, this is a Counter-Strike channel, they would field teams in Counter-Strike 1.6, and they'd even field some fan-favorite players like Jordan Nothing Gilbert back in his early day career. But that isn't really what Evil Geniuses was known for. Evil Geniuses' main branding were high-performance strategy games. Basically, video game chess. Games like StarCraft 2 and Dota 2 is where this organization thrived, as they would win the International in 2015, the biggest tournament in esports. In fighting games, they've also got players like Justin Wong, the guy who got Daigo parried. Sorry, Justin. But that made Evil Geniuses a little bit niche in terms of a brand, because they weren't competing in the big boy esports like League of Legends, Overwatch, or, well, Counter-Strike. One of the biggest legacy brands in esports were just floating along, and were, quote, just a handful of bad business decisions away from bankruptcy. Evil Geniuses were looking to be purchased, and fortunately, for esports history, they got their angel investor. In May of 2019, private equity firm Peak 6 Entertainment would acquire Evil Geniuses. And very importantly here, one of their associates, Nicole LaPointe Jameson, would take over as the CEO. Okay, but many of us have seen big business takeovers with niche brands. Rarely are these people actually associated with the brands that they take on over. They're not endemic to their industry, and the exact same happens here. Evil Geniuses were full of esports old guard and mostly just run by, the gamers themselves. Well, here comes big business men and women to try and revamp this organization, this failing business. These folks were not endemic to esports, but to Ivy League colleges. So now that we are owned by a big private equity firm, we have to do big business things. That's called aggressive growth. Peak 6's goal was to beef up Evil Geniuses' revenue streams and potentially sell off the organization in the future for a profit. You actually went into esports to make a profit? So the way you start doing that is by purging all the esports old guard and getting rid of the gamers in the company, also known as dead weight. With millions of dollars in backing and a literal PR team to make herself, not the organization, look good. Anyways, with this backing, to the LaPointe, as her Twitter handle would once upon a time be known as, started to play some esports Barbie, as many organizations have in the past. Alongside the purge, Evil Geniuses also aggressively expanded into the big boy esports, League of Legends and Counter-Strike, buying franchise slots in both for untold millions of dollars. And actually, things started out really well for EG. They were a very winning organization in the games they initially participated in, as their Counter-Strike unit would ascend to #1 in the world, winning ESL 1 New York and Star Ladder Season 8, with a unit containing your favorite future Valorant players and content creators. Sorry guys, a little bit of foreshadowing. Okay. That's something for you all to know at home. Counter-Strike is one of the hardest esports to turn a profit in because of salaries. Big organizations have utterly cranked up the price of players. The idea that you can pay under $500,000 a year for a star player just doesn't make sense to the biggest businessmen who arrive on in and expect to be playing regular sports ball. We gotta pay these players well over $500,000 just to play video games and make GG tweets. Evil Geniuses was one of these people. One thing to put out there, not all esports players necessarily drive fans to them. They can be good at games, but that's about the extent of their branding, unless you're a streamer like Terra.
You want me push tunnel or no?
Boots here, come on.
Yep.
Bomb.
I'm blind.
Bomb's there. Blind my mark.
One out mid. Dead. That was fucking dead,
Wow.
Eric.
Good fucking
job, guys.
round. Did
I
you
don't think
just...
they heard you ever.
Or a personality like Simple.
Peter, why you... what he's doing?
Bully.
Why you bully me?
Or you're also
For
good at the
Simple's actually
game
get
like
through
Simple.
this. He's gonna throw the AWP and oh my god, Simple!
There is like zero possibility you will ever make a profit spending $150,000 a month and millions of dollars on partner leagues and franchise slots on your team unless you maintain a legion of fans. That brings us to our next point. Branding. The logo for Evil Geniuses has existed for literal decades. It is a staple of gaming. They are one of the legacy organizations in esports. That logo carries weight. So, the brilliant mind of Nicole Jameson. Yes, she was literally the driving force behind this rebrand, not a design art team, marketing, or anything. It was her idea. So anyways, this person with no idea about Evil Geniuses past called for a complete rebrand of a legendary logo in esports. This wasn't EG anymore. It felt like a corporation now, instead of what was a group of humble gamers creating their teams. The old guard was getting purged and they had a shitty rebrand. This is looking a lot like every single business takeover ever. Guys, this is still the prelude. We haven't even gotten to the main course yet. So let's keep this thing rolling. The pandemic set in and esports suddenly took front and center stage as conventional sports scrambled to find solutions. Gamers were now playing their tournaments online. So let's zone in on Evil Geniuses Counter-Strike. North American Counter-Strikes had mostly made up their mind on which team to cheer for. It was Team Liquid. And there was no way that the corporate branding of Evil Geniuses is going to entice any Counter-Strike gamers. Esports fans are a lot more personal with their organizations. Like, for Christ's sake, look at the branding for organization DSG. For fans, a literal Microsoft Paint drawing is more personable to a gamer than whatever branding agency built this logo. So the second half of 2020 was pretty damning for Evil Geniuses Counter-Strike. The roster wasn't putting up results in North America anymore. On their excursions to Europe, this happened.
All rest in the hands of the Seas. Everyone just got taken out. Taps to Forrester. Awkward spray!
Evil Geniuses were just taking a nosedive. Breezy was once a ridiculous superstar fragger, was no longer. And Cirque fell off a cliff. Reportedly ugly contract negotiations with Evil Geniuses were impacting the team's performance. In lieu of these stupid contract negotiations, in February of 2021, Ethan would leave Evil Geniuses to join 100 Thieves Valorant. He switched games. Ethan was a literal top 20 player in the world, by the way. But when you're basically on the verge of losing your job, go ahead and take your services elsewhere. Then shortly after, in what would be probably one of the best career decisions you could ever make, Tarek would retire from competition. Hi, Tarek. These two left an organization that would just never recover. And so begins. From being the face of North American Counter-Strike to falling off the face of the earth. Welcome to the worst esports experiment ever. Hey, gamer. Yes, you, gamer. And if you aren't a gamer, it's okay. You can be one just for the segment. Afraid that you're a North American Counter-Strike player that might get signed to Evil Geniuses? Don't worry. You can take safety in Arena Breakout Infinite, a free-to-play tactical extraction shooter where you can loot, grab, steal, loot some more, and then sell. Like, I found this gas can that's worth $65,000. That's like the monthly salary of a tier 1 Counter-Strike player. Alrighty, jokes aside, playing the game has definitely left me wanting more. With crisp visuals and easy to pick up UI compared to other shooters I've played, it's truly been an exceptional new player experience, while also running incredibly smoothly. Climb aboard and hop in at arenabreakoutinfinite.com. With Season 1 starting, there are tons of free bonuses to get yourself a head start. So, let's get it. Alright, speaking of sellouts, EG in 2020 would undergo another rebrand since they already realized that annihilating your legacy in esports doesn't go well with your already dwindling fan base. Nobody was wearing this merch, I'm telling you that. And went to a more modernized version of the old logo. This logo doesn't really have the same gamer luster, and it didn't really evoke anything in me, but fine, fuck it. Evil Geniuses in 2021 were categorically a burning bonfire of money as they placed last in all of their partner leagues. The organization would place dead last in ESL Pro League Season 13, Season 14, Season 15, and Season 17, and have their partner slot reviewed for relegation. In 2022, wielding their massive wallets that they got from out of thin air, like, who was giving these people money? They signed the North American Nostalgia roster, consisting of the North American major winning core, the GOATs, the people who are supposed to drive all the fans back to Evil Geniuses, of Stewie 2K, Automatic, Rush, and their two demotivated superstars, Breeze and Cirque. There is no doubt that Evil Geniuses just lit another stack of cash on fire to sign these players. This only got more bad PR as an altercation, which would become dubbed the Starbucks incident, would go down. Stewie 2K was notoriously a very powerful personality on his team, and his leadership style would be criticized by his coach, Damian Malik Marcel. Malik offered Stewie to go to Starbucks to try and resolve said issues over the table, but Stewie then refused to go because he thought there wasn't a real issue here, which led to a very antagonistic working environment between Stewie and his coach. A bunch of hearsay later, and Evil Genius's Counter-Strike division went back to the drawing board after missing the major and basically imploding 3 months later. Great stuff. Magnificent. So, Evil Geniuses reconvene at the table. Do we continue going into Counter-Strike after we have just been complete garbage for the last 2 years? They labor, they go to the whiteboard, and they discuss. But the question is not how we are going to make a good Counter-Strike team. It's how are we going to burn as much money as possible? For context, in League of Legends, Evil Geniuses are actually doing extremely well because they may or may not have been mentally abusing one of their players. It is to be noted that Evil Geniuses had 2 separate practice squads competing in North America's Academy League. So Nicole was like, how about we save our failing Counter-Strike team by doing the exact same thing in a completely different game with a completely different circuit? I love business people. Evil Genius's esports division decided to concoct what is probably the most ridiculous, not just esports, but sports experiment ever. Like, I understand. You have feeder teams, you have practice squads. Evil Geniuses would sign 15 players in what would be dubbed the Blueprint Project. Evil Geniuses would sign 2 notable organizationless North American Counter-Strike teams, Party Astronauts and Carpe Diem. There's no shame to these players. If someone walks up to you and offers you a bag of money, you take it. But they weren't like prodigies or anything to say of that sort. They had been competing in the North American circuit for multiple years up to this point, and while the hope was to build up these players, it was mostly a lukewarm operation. They'd go underneath the tag of EG Black and EG White. Evil Genius's business model was that of a black hole, but instead of sucking in light, it takes money from investors' pockets and gives it to North American Counter-Strike players. I mean, as a North American Counter-Strike fan, hell yeah, brother. In the meantime, the main team was trying to rebuild after the Starbucks incident. They attempted to sign 2 European players, Kazakh IGL, Nealon, which, according to him, was the most unexpected thing in his career to be offered to join Evil Geniuses, and then French prodigy rifler, Masuda. Okay, so problem, 8 days later after this report came out, Masuda signed to Falcons. Evil Geniuses management effed it up. So right off the bat, they would have to promote a player from their Blueprint project, Hext, to join the main team. They would rock up to their mandatory Blast Premier groups and get eliminated in last place without a single win. They would be at ESL Pro League, where they would actually go 2-3. But not before they couldn't take a single map off of a top 15 team, and they wouldn't make playoffs.
Wanted to do against their North American, I guess, rivals, certainly in this group, but certainly in terms of region. One there, yeah.
Not so much yet in terms of ability.
However, they'd qualify to the 2022 Rio Major. And guess who was there? We're jumping back into the IEM Road to Rio Americas, and we have a qualifying best of 3 on our cards. Evil Geniuses and 9Z are both 2-0, both pulling upsets, and they find themselves in a position to make themselves to Rio with a win right here. He's inside of A main. How much noise is Max gonna make? A lot. Oh, he's gonna stomp. Automatic nose, pre-fire is there. 2 versus 4. 9Z, not like this. It's only NQZ. The 17-year-old has to make a 1v4 happen and get that bomb planted in 10 seconds. Out in the open. Who else but Hex to do it? It's EG. They're off to Rio. Well, get excited as they'd exit the Rio Major 1-3. So, what was going on with those other 10 players other than the main team? Well, locally in North America, they'd be competing, but it felt so redundant looking in from the outside, as these rosters had hardly any tournaments to compete in. EG Black would be competing in the regional league of ESL's Challenger, with some shakier rules, because the whole point of ECL was to qualify for ESL Pro League. But their main team is already automatically invited. So if EG Black does well, they would automatically forfeit their spot. So it didn't really even make sense to be here. So while EG Black was doing that, EG White existed for 9 months. They would play a total of 7 organized tournaments total. The players didn't mind it. They knew what they were getting into when they signed these contracts, but it just doesn't make managerial sense. Evil Geniuses became the punching bag of esports.
Things you would not hear at an EG bootcamp.
Guys, I think this season's going to be fine. I've spoken to the management, and they're going to put out a series of tweets that's really going to put us in a strong position this year. Everything's probably going to be fine.
Hey, it sure is getting cold in here. Anybody got any more money we can burn?
No, but seriously, guys, I think if we just add 14 more players, I reckon we're onto something.
Okay, guys, I'd like to introduce a new member to our staff. It's Kassad.
We have one more character in this Evil Geniuses story. A great pundit. He goes in for some jokes. His name is Kassad. He's a coach formerly, and now a broadcast analyst and team manager of, he's had some drama lately. But he is Evil Genius's biggest hater. He is leading the pitchforks and torches against this organization. We will touch back on Kassad in just a little bit. But wait, they actually started to put up a result? In their opening best of 3 of 2023, Evil Geniuses Counter-Strike face off against world #1 Heroic at Blast Premier Spring Groups. And they defeat them 2-1.
Close. Yeah, he's got him boxed in, and that's real important. Walking in slowly, Cadian nearly getting shut down on the escape. He has no idea, and this time we're not lying. It's EG bringing down Heroic. It took a round extra, but they've done it. Evil Geniuses management start to chirp about their big win, especially one EG staff member, GamerDoc. We just took the #1 ranked team in the world, and all the casters can think to say is Heroic didn't show up. Correct! We clawed our way back from 217th in the world by building a talent pipeline the whole scene memed on. Correct! Step out of the echo chamber and pay attention. Anyways, the next day they would get their shit absolutely rocked by Team Vitality, getting 16-11 and then losing 16-1. Oh, hey, in the lower bracket, they rematch versus Heroic, where, you guessed it, Lightning does not strike twice. After winning map 1 16-9, they win 7 more rounds for the rest of the entire series. And then, as a cherry on top, they go to the knockout bracket, where they face off against NA rivals team Complexity. They lose to another North American team. Cancel out that AK. Wiz on the other side, 1 versus 4. They know where he is, and they will be able to take him down. Complexity, 16 rounds as they finally bring down EG.
At ESL Pro League Season 17, they would proceed to go 0-3. So EG arrive in Monterrey, Mexico for the Blast Paris Major RMR to attempt to qualify to the last CSGO Major. This is by far the most important tournament. EG aren't even supposed to be here. It all starts in February. Kasad issues the challenge to all North American teams. It's the Kasad Grand Slam. $1,000 to whoever can eliminate evil geniuses from major contention to rid North America of, in his mind, incompetence. They lose their opening best of one to a literal face-it pug team named Yer, because Yer. Remember, Evil Genius's management are paying exorbitant salaries for some of their tenured players. To lose to a team, you can't even call it a team. It's more a collection of players. This team formed solely for the RMR and nothing else. Well, that kind of speaks for itself. EG proceed through the tournament, but then lose to MIBR 0-2, putting them in the 3-2 bracket. Since there are only 7 slots available, this puts them in a decider match versus Brazilian squad, Team 1. This squad back then had Malbs MD. He now plays for G2 Esports. He goes, these days, by the doctor. Let the young gun give evil geniuses a bit of brain surgery with a 1.57 rating and eliminating EG from major contention. It also feels pretty nice to be the winners of the Kasad Grand Slam. But unfortunately for the haters around the globe, evil geniuses get granted a lifeline. Underdog NA team Detonate have a player who is undergoing a medical emergency and have to withdraw from the tournament. So, following tournament guidelines, evil geniuses get called up for the RMR. So, in Mexico, they score an opening win versus Imperial. Then, in a best of one, falter to Furia, a far better team than evil geniuses. And in an elimination best of 3 versus Paqueta, a team that is filled with aging leaders and far inexperienced young guns.
Confident in it, Yell with the next. Now it's all onto Wiz, and Wiz overwhelmed, down to 2 HP, out of there. Paqueta have done it again, battling back from a map deficit the whole series.
They lose 2-1. They got resurrected, only to blow it again. Anyways, I suppose EG would do it okay in other esports. By the way, they recreated the Blueprint project in Valorant by having a practice squad for themselves. It turned out to accidentally work as they win Valorant Champions in 2023. And then proceed to release the worst winning merchandise you've ever seen. Like, bro, they just reposted their Twitter graphic and put it on a t-shirt, man. The running joke even in the Valorant community is how little fans they have. People were only a fan of the players and definitely not a fan of evil geniuses. Wow, if you kept your legendary branding that has so much ethos in the early eras of your esports journey and really championed excellence like you did in the past, maybe you would actually retain a little bit of your fan base, huh? I mean, name any business takeover of your favorite intellectual property and see how it's actually been good to its current fan base. Well, folks, thank God it's all over. Evil geniuses in 2023 put their Counter-Strike operations on hold. Nicole LaPointe Jameson resigned. She brought evil geniuses so many steps forward, but like a meteor in the atmosphere, burned down into nothing. EG were downsizing. They removed their Counter-Strike roster, sold their League of Legends franchise slot, and basically ran a skeleton crew to keep their Valorant team alive. Yes, they won Valorant's biggest tournament and were failing to stay afloat. And so, esports' most ridiculous experiment ended. Chris de Apollonia would step in as interim CEO and then official CEO, and has been running a skeleton crew at the organization while still trying to complete their deliverables. Quickly, after taking the wheel back, evil geniuses made one redeeming decision. They brought back the old logo. They have a shred of decent branding in Valorant, where the most successful female competitor in esports ever, Valorant coach Potter, holds the torch high for the organization. Everything has kind of gone full circle. Well, Evil Geniuses is once again back to just floating along the esports river while operating a skeleton crew, trying to keep the lights on. The more things change, the more they stay the same. The moral of the story? I have no idea. Thanks
And
for
get
watching.
that bomb planted in 10 seconds. Out in the open. Who else but Hex to do it? It's EG. They're off to Rio.